I'm sure we have a lot of wine fans out there, but have you ever had the itch to try and get into winemaking? Our next guest did, and he wrote this new book about the experience. Nicholas O'Connell is the author of Crush, My Year as an Apprentice Winemaker, and Nicholas has an author event tonight at the Elliott Bay Book Company. But first, he is here on our couch, and you brought wine. Thank you.
Well, that's part of the plan.
I think it should be part of the plan. So I'm guessing you liked wine before this book, but what made you want to get in specifically to winemaking?
So wine is such a mysterious and kind of compelling beverage that once I began tasting really good wine when I was a student in France, and so that was kind of the beginning of my interest in this. And then I was a journalist early on, and being a journalist and writing about wine allowed me to kind of explore it further. And the further I just got sucked into it. And I really enjoyed actually the sort of less glamorous part of winemaking, because a lot of winemaking is, I like to describe people sitting on the deck in white pants, not doing any work. And I wrote about that a lot. And then once I started understanding what the process by which you got to that point, I found that fascinating. And there was a guy, David Lake, who was a winemaker at Columbia Winery, who introduced that to me as I was writing a story. And that was sort of the eye-opening moment that allowed me to think, wow, I should write a book about this.
And here you are. And you said you wrote this book to both demystify wine and then remystify it. So please explain.
So kind of what I was saying before, wine has this mystique of everything is great and fun and fabulous. And it has that aspect of it at the very end. But, and so that's partly what I wanted to debunk a little bit. But then as I began to do that and got into the process of, for example, crushing and stemming and all that, I found it even more mysterious, but in a different way than the kind of the image that is oftentimes associated with wine.
Right, you're just sitting around and tasting wine in your white pants.
Nobody's working,
What was it like spending a full year then as an apprentice winemaker?
It was fascinating, honestly. Exhausting at times because it's such a physical job, and especially during the harvest, maybe they'll take one day off. There's just this constant pressure to get the fruit in the correct manner. And so I learned a lot from that, and just getting to know the people was fascinating, honestly. We're so lucky with some of the people, like David Lake, who was one of the founding fathers, and then Bob Betts, Jim Holmes at Ciel de Cheval, where I get my grapes. All of that I just found fascinating, because Ciel de Cheval, for example, the soil there was deposited by the Missoula flood. So all this stuff, it just goes back many, many years, and there's so many different aspects to it. And then as a journalist, I thought it was fantastic as a subject, because great people to profile. The Washington wine industry was just exploding and continues to produce all kinds of fascinating wines and characters who come here from all over the place. So there was just a lot both of my interest in wine and material as a journalist to write about, and that's what makes, for me, a great book.
Yeah, and a great story. So what were some high points when you look back into making this book?
There were a lot of high points, but one in particular, I got to know Warren Winiarski of Stag's Leap Wine Cellars, whose wine won the Judgment of Paris in 1976. And that was kind of the turning point in the American wine industry, because his red wine, beat the best of the French wines at this historic tasting. And then as I got to know him, he was such a knowledgeable, historically important figure in Napa, and just a genuinely nice and interesting man. And so to be able to get to know people, kind of like your job, I get to know people that are just fascinating. And so that was a total high point. And then a lot of the other people I met too, those were high points for me.
Were there any low points that you can think of?
There were low points.
Really?
Yeah, there were low points. Like One of the stories I think is the funniest is I was fermenting grapes in the basement of our house, a ton of Cabernet grapes, and I didn't realize how many fruit flies that would produce. And so after a while, the fruit flies, when they first arrived, you could just tell they were really happy about being there and everything. And my wife was sort of okay with it briefly, and then they started multiplying, and eventually you had to part like a curtain of flies in the kitchen. So that was a low point. And finally, we have a relationship, me and the fruit flies, because we both love wine.
As one does, yes.
But the low point was when I had to get out the shop vac and get rid of them.
Oh, yes. Oh, that's so gross. I can no. Okay, moving on. What's special to you about our wine here in the Northwest?
So what's special here, of course, the climate. There's so much variety. Like Washington State has so much geographic diversity. And so as a winemaker, that gives you a lot of different of choices as to what you're going to do. There's so much new development too. I mean, there've been, and I write about this, the history of wine, some of the people who are the key figures, but there's new places like Chelan that is terrific and will be an exciting new area, you know, in maybe, well, it's producing great wine now, but it'll get even better. The camaraderie of the wine making community is really, really terrific. And the sharing of knowledge, like there were so many people who were so willing and so generous in their knowledge of winemaking. So I'd interview a famous winemaker, and then when I had a few extra questions, I'd say, look, you know, I've got this batch of Syrah that I'm making. Could you suggest some ways to make it better? Or could you recommend someone like this enologist, Erica Orr, who was terrific? So anyway, it's that kind of a community feeling plus the very high quality of the terroir and the climate that makes it's just very exciting to be involved.
We live in a beautiful place. Thank you so much for being here today. We
My
so
pleasure.
appreciate it.
My pleasure.